welcome back to the strangest gig I've ever played. Tales from the studio and the stage. The podcast where we hear the true tales of all the strange, weird, wild, wacky, terrible, and or amazing gigs we get to take in order to make it as freelance and gigging musicians. On the podcast with me today is one Chris Holt. Chris Holt is a guitar player, sideman, frontman, cover band man. He does it all. He's a legend in Dallas. Can't wait to hear his stories. Stick around. All right, I know. It's been a while. I apologize. I'm doing my best here, people. But I make this pledge to you. This is my goal this year, to be more consistent with these podcasts. But you know, life gets in the way. I've got some more great guests lined up, so I hope you'll be patient with me and stick around. Check the podcast out whenever one gets dropped, as the kids say. I did want to mention that my lovely and beautifully talented wife, Carrie Norwood, released her debut single recently. It's a cover of the Irish folk song Raglan Road. It is beautiful. Please go check it out on Spotify. Look her up, Carrie Norwood. It is a beautiful song, and I'm very proud of her. Please go check it out. On the podcast today, as I mentioned, is Chris Holt. Chris has played in a million bands around Dallas. I first heard about him when he played in one of my favorite Dallas bands, Sorta. But he was also in The Slack. He also did his solo projects, as well as the terrific Beatles tribute band, A Hard Night's Day. His most recent project is the great Dallas original soul band, Bastards of Soul, whose lead singer, Chadwick Murray, the powerhouse Chadwick Murray, tragically passed away recently. We recorded this podcast the week of their most recent album, Corners, which again just came out. It is amazing. Please go check it out. Look up Bastards of Soul on Spotify and check out Chris's amazing work with them. He also found his way as a sideman for the great Don Henley in one of my favorite stories. It's the kind of stuff you read about and think doesn't actually happen, but it does happen. And he'll get into that story a little later in the podcast. He also currently plays with the great Max Weinberg, if you can believe it or not, in a gig that would stress me out to no end just based off the amount of material they have to know. You'll hear more about that as well. So let's get to it. So Chris Holt, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you. Let's start off. Let's just jump right in. Tell me about your current gig, kind of what you've got going on currently. Yeah, let's start there. Tell me about your current gig.
I've got a bunch of them. What I've done in my older my older age.
Right.
Do I have to say my age?
You do not.
Is I've just kind of settled into being a sideman.
Yeah.
Primarily, and I still like to be an artist, but I have been a working guitar player and keyboard player for so long that now I just take those gigs. So on the original front, the main thing I've been doing for the past 5 years is the Bastards of Soul. We had a record that came out literally a month before COVID.
Yeah.
Our first record.
Yeah.
And then we made our second record during COVID.
Yeah.
And then our lead vocalist, our frontman, tragically passed away
Yeah.
right after we finished the record. And so that record actually comes out this Friday.
Yeah.
And so that's been really weird to kind of relive it all. And we have this beautiful record that we can't really go out and do anything with. You know, we don't have a replacement singer for him.
Are there plans for?
Well, we're gonna do a show this coming weekend, which is a benefit for his family.
Yeah.
And it's basically a listening party for the record.
Great.
And we are gonna play a set, but it's going to be different. It's going to be kind of
for sure.
partially instrumental, and then I'm going to sing a couple of the songs that I wrote for the record, and Chad Stockslager is going to sing a couple of his. So we're going to try to be as respectful as we can to the material. But yeah, we don't have any.
But no, like guest artists or.
We're going to have one guest who comes up at the very end to sing a song that's not on the record.
Okay, cool.
But beyond that, we don't have any plans.
That's hard. Chadwick was such
the
whole such a powerhouse.
The whole band was built around him.
Yeah.
Like we started that band to
feature him,
prop him and be like, dude, this is going to make you.
Yeah.
In our dreams, we wanted it to make him famous and make us famous as a band. So, I mean, I think that we still love being a band, but I don't know how or what we will do in the future.
Yeah.
We do have enough material in the archive that we will we are planning to put out a third record with
Oh, great.
Chadwick's vocals, just of stuff that didn't make the first two
Oh,
records.
cool.
So there is enough
That's
that we can
great.
clean out the archives.
Oh, I'm
for
so
a third
happy about
record.
that. That's great.
But beyond that, well, time will tell.
Yeah. And where did y'all record the second record?
We did both records at Niles City
Okay.
in Fort Worth.
And who produced?
Josh Block.
Okay,
and
yeah,
then, and
the
then
Niles City guy.
the second record, Corners, which is coming out this weekend, was co-produced by Skin Wade, who's our manager, who
Mhm.
runs the record label Eastwood
Yeah.
Records that we're on, and then Joel Rafe, who's one of the engineers and producers out there at Niles as well.
Okay.
So between Block and Skin and Joel
Yeah.
and
Us.
all
y'all.
of the strong-headed individuals
Sure.
like myself in the
Well,
band,
because I mean, Bastards of Soul is. I mean, you're all songwriters.
yeah, that's
right?
the thing, is it's like, 4 songwriters in
Yeah.
the band, all
And y'all have all led your own bands.
yeah, a bunch of alpha males. It's a little rough. So
I bet.
that's what I've been doing on the original front, and then on other gigs that I do. I'm a career musician, and all I do is play for a living. So I tour with Max Weinberg. I've been doing a bunch of those. We're now back to touring again with COVID mostly out of the way. And Tony Kishman, who's a McCartney guy, and I do that with him, and that's a cool gig because he does his McCartney thing, and I know all the material, so all I have to do is just show up, fly to wherever the next gig is, and it's all backlined, and I just play guitar, bass, piano, and sing.
Cool. How'd you get hooked up with Max?
Max called me because one of the guys that I play with in Tony's band, the McCartney guy I was just talking about, he has been playing with Max for 10 or 15 years now. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey, Max is looking for another guitar player, singer who can handle this workload." And the thing about Max is you have to know 300 plus songs, and there's never a set list. The way Max does it is he takes requests from the audience, and there's a master list that scrolls on a video screen behind the band.
Oh, wow.
So during the show, people look at the list that's scrolling,
Yeah.
and they'd say, "Oh, well, we want to hear American Girl by Tom Petty, or we want to hear You Really Got Me by the Kinks, or Zeppelin, or the Beatles, or whatever
Only
it is."
somebody who came up with Bruce Springsteen would
And
need to do that.
And there's always
Always,
you
yeah.
have to know every Springsteen song.
Oh,
ever.
for sure.
So my friend John Merjavi, who's the other guitar player, called me one day about 3 or 4 years ago and said, "Hey, I do this thing with Max. I'm going to send you the master list, and I want you to tell me how many of these songs you already know." And so I looked at it, and I kind of fudged it a little bit. I said, "Nah, I know 85% of them," which is pretty
Yeah.
close. I probably knew 75%
Yeah.
of them by heart. And then he said, "Okay, well, learn the other 15%, and you're in." And so I did that, and it's a fun gig, but
That's
man,
great.
it's anxiety ridden.
Oh, I bet.
Because you never know what's coming next.
So do you don't play with charts or a book or anything?
We can play with charts. We're allowed to use charts. Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't really need the charts for the songs so much. What I need are lyrics, because I sing.
Because
a
you're
lot.
singing some? Okay.
Yeah, I sing a lot of them, and on any given night, I might sing 70% of the songs, or it might be Glenn, the bass player, who sings.
Yeah.
It's like, because you never know what's coming.
Sure.
You might have a clue, like, okay, we're definitely going to play Thunder Road because the Springsteen fans always want to hear that, or and there's some songs that get called more than others, but there's tons of deep cuts and other things that, and you got to know every Beatles song on earth, which I do, but it's hard when you're like, you kind of look across the stage and go, okay, you sing the high harmony, and I'll take the guitar solo, and then
Yeah.
you
Y'all are figuring that out before
yeah,
Max
and
counts
I
it
mean,
off.
if it's the same group of guys and
Yeah.
we've done it before, then a lot of times we just know what we're gonna do. But some songs will get called that we've never played. They'll call, because what Max used to do in that gig was he would go out into the audience with a wireless mic and walk around. I mean, he's real comfortable with his fan base, so he would just walk out. "What do you want to hear?
Yeah.
What do you want to hear?" And then he would call them to us, and then we'd kind of talk and go, "Okay, I'll play rhythm and sing, and you take the guitar solo."
Yeah. And people are trying to stump y'all, I'm sure.
All the time. And they'll ask for stuff that's not even on the list. And sometimes Max will go, "Yeah, we can do that, right, guys?" And we go, "Come on." But when COVID happened, and then we came back from COVID, he didn't want to go out in the audience anymore. So what he started doing was just putting index cards near every seat, and then they pass around a hat, and then
Okay.
so
That's cool, yeah.
he can control it a little bit more that way if he wants to,
Right.
because
He can look at it and go,
he can look
"I'm
at an
not doing
index
that."
card and go, "Oh, it says Thunder Road." but
Yeah, we know that one.
but no, it's a great fun gig. But it it keeps you on your toes.
Oh, for sure.
So I do a lot of that these days.
Hmm.
So between that and other local projects, I've got 100 other little things that
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
around town when I'm in town. But
And then tell me about you played, or maybe I may still play it when he's playing with Don Henley.
yes, that's been going for about the last 10 years or so.
And how'd you
And
get that gig?
man, it was crazy. It was do you Salim Narala, you know
Yeah,
Salim,
I've met some.
producer here in town. He called me one day about 10 years ago and said, "Hey, would you have any interest in teaching Don Henley's kid guitar?" Because I knew Don lived in town. I
Yeah,
mean, everybody knows, Don's a
right.
Texas boy. And I said, "Well, sure, give him my number." So, calls the next day. "Hey, Chris, it's Don Henley." And I'm like, so long story short, I wound up going over there to meet the kid. While I was over there at his house, he and Stan Lynch. I'm a huge Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers fan. So
Yeah,
just the second I walk in and Stan Lynch is standing there,
fucking
I'm like,
Stan
"Oh my
Lynch.
God."
Yeah.
They're working on a song in the studio, and Don kind of invites me back and says, "Hey, you want to crack at this guitar solo?" I mean, I'm just like, I'm like, "You're talking to me?" And so literally
Yeah.
on the spot, he
Wow.
asks me if I want to track this guitar solo that wound up being on his record.
That's
And it
awesome.
turned into 3 days in the studio with him. And over the course of the next couple years, he would just call me from
Hmm.
time to time. I was teaching this kid,
Yeah.
but that kind of came and went, like
Yeah.
that wasn't something that was happening nonstop. But Don kept calling. He would say, "Hey, a friend of mine passed away, and the family has asked me to sing at the service. It's in East Texas. You want to go down there and sing with me?" And I needed an accompanist. Okay. And then it all kind of culminated with and one thing that was crazy is the album I put out, my last solo album called Stargazer, which is
Great album, by the
we
way.
thank you. We are on the same label.
Yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
label mates. He sang on it. Like he told me at one point, because I had done some favors for him, he said, "Well, hey, if you want me to sing on your record, you just let me know." And I thought he was kidding. But then he reminded me of it and said, "Hey, seriously, let me know when you're next in the studio if there's a song." And I was like, "Oh my God." So he came in and did a duet with me
That's
on
awesome.
this
Where'd y'all do it at?
at a place called Tomcast here in
Yeah, yeah.
Dallas with Paul Williams
Hmm.
producing. And and it was amazing that Don did that for me. And I thought surely that was
That was
the
it.
end of it.
Yeah.
But then a few months later, he called me and asked me to do a gig in Vegas with his full band, um, subbing for a guitar player named Pete Thorne, this guy who's a legend.
Yeah.
I mean, dude,
Oh,
Pete
yeah.
Thorne's. And what I didn't know was that Pete had gotten himself into a situation where he was kind of double booked. He was touring with a Japanese artist, and he had a tour of Japan scheduled for that summer, and you just can't say no to Don. And so when Don has something comes up and Pete says, "Oh, sorry, I'm going to be in Japan," Don called me and said, "Would you be able to come to Vegas and play guitar?"
Was it a
And
one off or was it like a residency?
I thought it was supposed to be a one-off,
Okay.
but what I found out later was that it was an audition.
Oh,
And
okay.
since basically the way I tell it is there are a million guitar players that could have done that job, but the ball crossed the plate. I swung real hard and hit it.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, I was in LA shooting a video with Dolly
That's
Parton,
great.
and then I'm like, what is going on? And he asked me to join the band full time,
That's
and
great.
that was in 2014, I guess, and I've been with him ever since. It went really well for a long time up until about 2018ish when the Eagles reformed.
Yeah.
And when the Eagles came back with Glenn Fry's son
Hmm.
and Vince Gill,
Hmm.
then that just kind of took all of his time away.
Yeah.
Like the Eagles, he can't say no to the
Sure.
Eagles. It's just
It's a machine.
it is a huge machine.
Yeah.
And even though I could play the whole Eagles catalog in that show, they have five other guitar players.
Right.
They've got Stewart and Joe and Vince and Deacon now, and so I just kind of wait until Don's ready to do more solo
Solo
stuff.
stuff. Yeah.
So the last time we did a full band show was right before COVID in 2020.
Do you
And then
think he
we
has
did,
plans for another solo album?
well, we've talked about it a little
Yeah.
bit. We did a thing together last year for Matthew McConaughey's
Hmm.
virtual benefit thing. We
Cool.
did
Yeah.
a song, and Milo Deering and Don
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I did it
Hmm.
together. And we were playing around with some bluegrass arrangements, and Don
Fun.
was really saying that he was
Kind of digging it. Yeah.
interested in doing a bluegrass record, and we were talking about doing it in Dallas. And But then they booked a bunch more
Eagle
Eagles
stuff,
dates.
yeah.
So
Well, now
it
they'll be
kind of it's
catching
just
up.
kind of on hold, and really Don can do whatever he wants at this point. So,
Yeah.
but technically I'm still in the band, and the
Yeah.
band is still on call if he decides he wants to do something.
That's great.
I mean, the way it's been for the past few years, we'll do 4 or 5, 6 gigs a year, and they always end up being these really cool,
Absolutely.
surreal gigs.
That's great.
And of course, COVID kind of screwed all that up. But,
Yeah.
But
So-
for 3 or so 4 years, we were touring the world,
Yeah.
going all over, and that was just the dream.
So tell me what it was like, because you've done like cover band things.
Yeah.
You've done the Beatles thing.
Yeah.
What was it like to step up and you're playing Boys of Summer and you look over and that's Don Henley and you think to yourself, I'm not in a cover band. I'm in the band.
That was the most surreal thing. I think that the first gig in Vegas was the one where it was, and it's not even the weirdest one. Like, I mean, I kind of made notes. I was like, I can tell you some crazy stories, especially, the way I look at my career, you break it up into two things. There's all the touring I did at the bottom of the barrel with the absolute weirdest, worst gigs you could possibly imagine, stuffed into a van with 7 other people, not, sleeping on couches. But then there's the polar opposite of that, which is the what I call the top of the mountain, which was Don and playing with Ringo and playing with James Taylor and playing with Joe Walsh and the Doobies and all this stuff that has happened kind of through the Don Henley connection. And those stories are equally surreal. They're maybe not, they're not bad. They're just on a whole other level that it's hard for somebody like me to process, because I'm a pretty normal dude.
Yeah.
and so whenever I was doing that first gig with him and we were doing Boys of Summer and Hotel California, like, dude, the very first time I had to play Hotel California and play Stuart Smith and I were doing the guitar solo duels, I was freaking out the entire time. I'm standing there going, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. Like, literally every single lick has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Or every person
Everyone
in this
will know.
arena is going to know that I screwed up the iconic solo.
Yeah.
And so those are the moments where you really have to have it together.
Yeah.
And but it is surreal, because you're looking around thinking, wow, all these songs, one after the other, Dirty Laundry, One of These Nights, Hotel California,
Massive hits. Yeah.
The Long Run, like every one of them, and it's the whole show, and you're just thinking, geez, this guy has 50 years now. His life has been this.
Yeah.
And
It's
those
crazy.
those of us who are fledgling songwriters, we want just that one,
Oh,
that
just a
one
taste.
song to cross over into,
But his have moved beyond hits to just
they're part
of the
they're part
American
human
lexicon,
the fabric of humanity. I mean,
Yeah.
we went down to New Zealand and did a gig in it was when we were in Brisbane, Australia. It's down in that part, but there was this bartender. We had a night off, and it was the night before we were playing at the Enormo Dome across the street or whatever it was, and there were like 3 of us from the band that were just sitting at the bar, and we're all just pretty normal looking dudes, And the bartender's this young, she's like 21, gorgeous, and she's just like, well, what do you guys do? Who do you? Oh, we're musicians. Oh, well, who do you play with? Don Henley. Oh, I never heard of him. Okay, well, where are you guys playing? The thing across the street. She's like,
Megadome.
you're playing there? And we're like, yeah. And she's like, well, who's he? We said, Don Henley. And she said, well, what's a song he sung? And we went, Hotel California. And she goes, oh my God, it's my favorite song. Like, well, that's the guy.
That's the guy.
Okay. It's worldwide, it's
for
global.
sure.
So that's, even though some people don't know him by name,
They know the songs. Yeah.
And so that's that's been an amazing experience, just getting to do that, and to realize you're like, wow, I'm not playing in a tribute band. I'm playing with the dude
band
who wrote this song.
Yeah.
Playing with the dude who sang it originally.
Yeah.
And Don, he's not real fond of the tribute bands.
I'm sure.
I mean, he doesn't, but I mean, he just kind of laughs about it. He's like, yeah, like he's not real interested. There's always like some tribute artist who wants, oh, can you introduce me to Don? I want him to see my band. I'm like, dude, Don doesn't want to see your band. I'm not gonna give Don your number.
He had high aspirations that Don Henley is going to come check him out in his Thursday night gig wherever.
Right. But I I did have a lot of people come out of the woodwork, when all of it started happening. Like, oh, I've always wanted to meet Don, or oh, do you think you could get us tickets? People that I hadn't talked to in
Oh, for
20
sure,
years
yeah.
asking me for tickets.
Yeah, all of a sudden they're popping up wanting to be on the guest list.
Right.
So tell me now about let's have some fun and let's talk about some of the weirdest, strangest gigs you've ever done.
Okay.
And when I say strange, I don't necessarily, and you said it before, I don't necessarily mean bad.
Yeah.
It's just those gigs where you look up and you're like, how did I get here? This is crazy.
Well, there's one, I mean, and I could talk about like when I played with Ringo, because
Mhm.
that to me that's like the pinnacle of everything.
Yeah.
I think when we did a show in Tacoma, Washington, at the Tacoma Dome there, and it was for Joe Walsh's Vets Aid, and we were the house band for the entire show. We played our set with Don. We backed James Taylor for his whole
Wow.
set. We backed Joe Walsh for his whole set,
Yeah.
and then Joe's brother-in-law is Ringo.
Yeah.
And so for the encore, Ringo comes out and does With a Little Help from My Friends
Wow.
with us there, and nobody really knew the vocal part or harmony part except me. So I was told by our MD Will, he said, Chris, you sing the harmony.
Yeah.
And so I literally got to do the Lennon accompaniment, the call and response
Yeah.
thing in the bridge, and like on the videos, like my voice is real prominent. And then I got to trade guitar solos with Joe on it.
Yeah.
Which was, so that was one of the most, I mean, to me, that was the pinnacle of everything, but
Yeah.
not the weirdest stuff. There was one time, this is actually a wild story. Of This was in like 2017, like the summer of 2017. And keep in mind, I'm not going to tell you about all the times where like it was like Puppet Show and Spinal Tap. Like I
Yeah.
could tell you about the time where we played a gig and the featured act was a chicken taking a dump on a bingo card, and people were cheering more for that than they were for the band. I could tell you those stories, but this one is a good one. So we were it was in the summer of 2017, I think, and we had a gig in the Hollywood Hills with Don,
Mhm.
and we were going to play with Jackson Brown.
Yeah.
So Jackson was going to do his kind of brief opening set, and then we were going to do the set with Don. They were going to sing Take It Easy together, and so there were lots of cool things that were happening there. And when we were riding over to the gig, we were getting kind of all these updates at the last second. It was like, oh, Jackson wants to do this song, or Jackson wants to do that song, and we're only gonna have an hour because Bill Murray's gonna do a set. And I was like, wait, what?
What kind of a set?
Yeah, like, and it was
Like
like,
a
well, apparently he's doing like a spoken word thing or something. Like,
Okay.
what? Okay, so we get there, and it's in the middle of the summer in LA, Hollywood Hills, blazing sun, this gigantic mansion on a hill. Can't even remember whose house it was, but anyway, this was a celeb studded event. I
Yeah.
mean, everywhere you looked, it was
It
like, oh,
sounds
there's
very
Ted
LA.
Danson.
Yeah,
Oh,
it sounds very LA.
it was crazy, totally surreal. But before all the people arrived, we were doing our sound check, and we're working on songs with Jackson. One of my great memories of it is that he asked us, he said, hey, can you guys do Rock Me on the Water?
Uh-huh.
And everybody kind of looked around and went, well, you didn't tell us to learn that one.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I know it. And so Jackson's sitting at the piano kind of singing, and, oh, people, look around you. And I'm sitting there playing on guitar, and I'm rock me on the water. I'm singing the harmony with him, and we're just kind of going at it.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here doing Rock Me
Great.
on the Water with Jackson Brown. And then after a couple minutes, he kind of was like, okay, you guys don't know that one? He's the only one who knows that one?
Oh,
Kind
no.
of points at me. And, okay, cool. Well, anyway, so while this is all happening, there's no cover. It's an outdoor stage. We're sweating. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, it's
Ugh.
just the sun is beating down on us. And I'm just kind of looking, and I'm looking at my pedal board, and I can't even see the lights, And
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I don't even know, I
don't know
only
what's
know
on,
if
yeah.
something's on. Like, I can't even tune my guitar because I can't see. And then out of nowhere, this umbrella just kind of appears in my sight line, and I'm like, I look up, and Bill Murray is handing me an umbrella.
He just appears out of the ether.
And I'm like, thanks, Mr. Murray. hands me an umbrella. And so I'm standing there, and then I look, and he's dressed with like, he's got like a Hawaiian shirt on, shorts, just a little funny
Oh,
hat. And I'm
gosh.
like, it's like, what about Bob? You know? And then he's got a slew of umbrellas under each arm. And so he walks kind of over to the girls, and he's like, hands them, and he just kind of repeats it across the front of the stage.
Doesn't say anything.
And yeah, just handing everybody umbrellas. And so we're all standing there with our umbrellas. And then when it comes time to play a song, we have to put them down. But then between songs, we hold our umbrellas again. And, I thought, well, that was just the strangest thing ever.
That sounds like a scene out of a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, right? So then when sound check is finished and we're kind of getting ready to go back to our quarters on the other side of the compound, wherever those are, I'm walking down the stairs and Bill Murray steps right in front of me. Hey. And I'm like, hey. He goes, do you mind if I look at your guitars? You've got a lot of them. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, hey, this is my son. And he introduces me to his adult son who's standing there. He's like, can he come too? Of course.
Sure, yeah.
So I walk up there. My tech is standing there by my vault of guitars. I usually bring about a dozen electrics on the road, and then I have acoustics as well. And we literally just go through the entire vault, and he picks one up. Can I hold this? Sure. Can I play it? He strums a few chords on it. So I'm like, all these guitars, and he wants, and I tell him a story about each one. Well, that's a Les Paul custom, and his favorite was my blue sparkled Duesenberg Star Player TV.
Oh, yeah,
and he was like, what's this one called? I said, it's called a Duesenberg. And he goes, I thought that was a car. I was like, it is a car, but it's also a guitar. And so we spent maybe 15 minutes just talking and like talking about guitars.
Yeah.
And then, and he shook my hand and was like, it was great to meet you, Chris. I really love your guitar collection. Hey, good. Have a great show. And I kept wanting to be like, what's your set going to be?
Yeah.
Well, it turned out that it was, like we said, it was a spoken word performance with a string quartet behind him.
So no comedy?
It was comedy, but it was but he was
like a stand-up act.
Yeah, but it was
Weird.
like, it was poetry. And it was the strangest thing. He did it for it was like a 20-minute set.
Yeah.
And then we did our thing with Jackson, and then we did our set. The craziest thing, this was, the stage was low to the ground. This wasn't like a big high-rise kind of deal. This was just in somebody's backyard.
Yeah.
So at the very end, Bill Murray is literally seated front, center, like front row center the entire show, and he's talking to Don between songs, and Don and Bill are riffing I guess they knew each other.
Yeah.
Because they're just kind of riffing with each other, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these other famous people, and I'm just like, this is the weirdest game I've ever played in my life. So sure enough, we finished with Hotel. Stuart and I doing the big solos at the end. We finished the song. I'm like, okay, I didn't screw it up, thank God. Put my guitar down, and then everybody exits stage left.
Yeah.
And literally out the back gate into the bus and
Yeah.
back to the hotel. Like, we're not going to hang and mingle at the party afterward. But I'm stage right, and I'm the last guy to walk off. So as I'm walking off the stage and just kind of waving goodbye, Bill comes right up onto the stage and just stands in my way and gives me a giant bear hug. Right in front of everybody, gives me a giant bear hug and says, Chris, you killed it. You killed it. And he does the whole we're not worthy thing. And then I'm just like, dude, stop it. And then I walked back off, and that was it. And then that was my Bill Murray moment.
That was your,
and
that's a pretty, even as far as Bill Murray moments go, that's pretty epic.
I know, because you hope that maybe someday you'll get that one moment where Bill Murray walks up and steals your French fries or something and walks off. But that was, it was unbelievable.
Wow.
And I remember I posted the whole story on Facebook. So and I was like, yeah, that actually happened.
Really happened.
I was like, I know that you think I just woke up from a dream, but that really just happened.
So as someone who's, you've talked about it, you've played for Chicken Drops, and you've played, as you said, the top of the mountain. What would you say your dream gig is?
Man, okay, this is a two-part answer, but the short answer is McCartney. Come on, I want to play with Sir Paul, with the real Sir Paul.
Yeah,
that's my dream gig. But beyond that, dude, I went and saw Jeff Tweedy this past weekend at the Majestic.
Yeah,
and I've seen him there twice now, and I think I've seen him solo 4 or 5 times over the past 30 years. And when Jeff tours solo, he just walks out with an acoustic guitar, no teleprompter,
Mm-mm.
no keyboards, no loop pedals, no pedal board of any kind. He didn't even plug in his guitar. He's got one mic on the guitar and one mic for his vocal. And it's a sold out room. And man, you can hear a pin drop. And he just sings his songs.
That's great.
And to me, I think that's all I really ever wanted. I think all I really ever
Yeah.
wanted was to be, not to be adored, but
Yeah.
to be able to sing my own songs to an audience that will shut up and listen.
A
I mean,
captivated
dude, I've
audience,
done
yeah.
so many solo gigs over the years, and I've fronted bands where I was the songwriter and the front man. And it's just hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to captivate an audience. It's hard to get an audience to shut up and listen, and to buy your tickets.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell out a theater.
Yeah.
And I just think, oh, Jeff Tweedy, he's been doing this for 30 years now,
Yeah, man.
selling out every room he plays.
Mhm.
And I know that some nights are harder than others. When I saw him at the Majestic 3 years ago before COVID, there were some drunk hecklers that really got on his nerves, and I
Oh.
felt so bad for him. I was like, I can't believe that even Jeff Tweedy has to deal with this.
Yeah.
And Henley, I've seen people heckle Henley in the middle of his stories, and I'm like, you paid all this money
I know.
to come see this guy who's a legend, and you're gonna heckle him.
Yeah.
What is wrong with people?
Man.
But that's really, I think, beyond. I mean, I consider myself one of the luckiest musicians on the planet to have gotten to have had the luck and success. I mean, it's a combination of luck and preparation,
Absolutely,
really.
yeah.
But it is a tremendous amount of luck to have gotten what I've gotten out of this business, and the fact that I'm almost 50 now and I can still play music as a full-time job.
Yeah,
That's
that's
just
great.
the luckiest thing in the world.
I mean, that's the dream, is to be able to.
Yeah. So
Provide for-
so I've lived the dream, at the bottom and at the top.
Yeah.
But really, all I think I would ever want more than that would be to be able to play a theater and have a sold out audience of people that wanted to hear me sing my songs.
Yeah.
Because I've got lots of them, but I just
Yeah.
gotten to a point where I'm like, I've become a bit apathetic about. I mean, I one of the last conversations I had with Trey. Well, it was the very last conversation. He was at my house just a few days beforehand, and I said, I'm gonna make another solo album this year, dude. I promise. I was like, I got 100 songs. I just need to get it together, and
Yeah.
I was like, and I need you to help motivate me. And that was literally the last conversation we had. And so I want to do right by him and really do right by myself by sticking to that and
Yeah.
actually doing another record of original material. That is my dream gig still to this day.
Yeah.
Someday I would love to be I don't know if I would call it successful enough, but I guess it is a degree of success
Yeah.
if you can do your own thing and have people really care.
Well, man, Chris, I can't thank you enough for coming and
Yeah,
telling the
thank you for
stories. It
having
was a
me,
lot
man.
of fun.
Yeah.
And
I hope they didn't go on too terribly long.
no, it was the perfect amount.
Excellent.
Perfect amount. All the ones I wanted to hear.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
And there he goes. Thanks so much to Chris Holt for stopping by. Y'all, please go check out the Bastards of Soul's latest album, Corners. It is phenomenal. Also, please check out Chris's criminally underrated solo album, Stargazer. Be sure to stick around and tune into the next podcast, which will hopefully not take 2 months to come out. Again, this is the Strangest Gig podcast, and I'm your host, Chris J. Norwood. So until next time, if you find yourself playing support to a chicken drop, just remember, a gig's a gig, right?